Hi everybody, I'm Kathy and I'm from TriHealth, and I'm one of their registered dietitians that does the nutrition presentations here. I also work a lot of other of our corporate clients too. I gotta apologize because I sound so nasal. I've lived in Cincinnati all my life, but 4 years, and never have had allergy problems till this year. And so that's what it is, I promise. It's not COVID, I promise. And so I sound like this, like I'm talking like this, and have a little bit of that gook, so I apologize. But I'm so glad to be here to talk to you about this, because this is my favorite topic of all the topics we do, because it's cutting edge. And I think just by virtue of the fact that you are members here and that you are coming to this talk, I bet 9 times out of 10 you're already doing these things. But what's so fun is the connection between the brain and the possible prevention of dementia and this whole antioxidant thing and healthy foods thing. And I'm kind of disappointed because in the past we actually had copies of the PowerPoint. So I wonder if we can ask Michael to get some of those copies, because that way you have it, because I'm really going to give you a list of the 10 easiest things to get into your food supply to really help with this dementia prevention. And Tufts University is the kind of primo nutrition place where all this research and everything is going on. So just stay tuned, because it's an emerging science now, and it's just really, really exciting to finally link kind of what we've known all along to nutrition. As a young dietitian, I always thought that nutrition, food intake was the most important thing with health and well-being. But the longer I've been alive and the more I've done these talks, it's really physical activity and nutrition go hand in hand. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So let's go ahead and get started. And this is so laid back. So if you have a question, if you have something to add, every time I've done one of these, I find that every person I've run into is kind of into their health and wellness and well-being. And often I learn just as much from you that hopefully you'll learn from me. So interrupt me anytime. I'm totally fine with that, okay? So we'll go ahead and get started. We know that, my problem is I don't want to wear my glasses because they'll steam up, and this is very, very small. So even though he's...
Wear your mask.
Huh?
I'm vaccinated.
Oh, no, I need to do that. But I'm going to go ahead and just kind of point to this too, because I can see that. But we know, and you all know, this is common sense, that nutrients and other key compounds are essential to our brain function. Serious deficiencies we've known in the past, like B12 and iron, can lead to impaired cognition or cognitive function, or due to neurological or nerve fiber complications. And that's because iron is a component of hemoglobin that helps us carry oxygen throughout our body. And if your brain gets deprived of the proper oxygenation, that can then kind of screw up your neurofibers, that kind of thing. So we know that. B12 is just really important with our nervous system too. When we talk about cognition, we're going to define it as the ability to use simple to complex information to meet the challenges of everyday living. So that's just our overall definition. But let's get to the fun nitty-gritty of this stuff. So could careful attention to our diet, I hate the word diet. Diet has the word die in it, and I much rather say food intake, but it gets so cumbersome to say that because, this whole diet word is horrible. But we in the medical and nutrition and science world, we say diet's what you eat. Okay, so we're just going to say the word diet, but I hate that word. I don't want to keep saying your nutrition intake because I'll have you here until tomorrow night. But so could careful attention to our food intake help us protect our aging brain from problems? In researching the nutrition-brain connection, what's so exciting is that there's new technologies now that can actually take the images of the brain. We'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later, but where they can actually check it out and see that there is a huge impact on what we eat. and count those individual brain cells. The thing is, just like everything in the scientific world, in the medical world, in the nutrition world, the science is constantly evolving. I did a whole host of nutrition consults on the phone today. I do a lot of nutrition coaching for different companies. And I just had one gentleman call me and say, oh, Kathy, my wife saw this doctor on TV, and he said beans are now really bad for you. And it's like, oh, no, don't tell me that. It's because we have so much information out there that if it's on the internet or if it's on TV, then we think that it's true. And the problem is you really don't know how to discern what's true and what's false. And especially as information evolves, give me the bottom line. And that's what I always try to talk about. So give me the bottom line. And so just, the caveat is that it's relatively new. Studies at the Neuroscience Laboratory at the USDA Human Nutrition Research Center on Aging at Tufts University in Boston, they're like the lamplight that are doing all this really wonderful research now that talking about certain dietary plant compounds. They're looking at those and how they affect the brain function. And so when I give you these like 10 foods that you really want to focus on, they've pretty much been cleared to enhance our brain function and our neurological system. If you've ever studied anatomy and physiology, you know that the central nervous system consists of our brain, our spinal cord, and then all the nerve fibers that come off. And our nervous system is like a circuit. So you have the big cell with these little things called dendrites off of it, and then you have this long tail called the axon, and it has little kind of little branches coming off. And so our whole nervous system is this big circuit where there's the cell with the dendrites, the big long tail, and then the little tiny branches off of it. And they're not totally connected, but they're like cell to cell. They're kind of like right within the same vicinity, and nerve impulses jump over to the next nerve cell, to the next nerve cell. So we're talking about the health of the cells, the health of the covering, the lining that covers these nerve fibers, and just complete brain health too. So all this stuff, anything that deals with the central nervous system is implied, or we're covering that in this talk in terms of brain health, but the whole nervous system too. So it's pretty exciting. Vitamins and minerals in plant foods provide protective antioxidants. Antioxidants, you've heard that word. Antioxidants are those components in food that prevents the oxidative process. Oxidation is perfectly normal. We're all oxidating. If you have this nail that you left out all winter long and the nail is rusty, that nail was oxidized. And what happened is the metals in that nail, or like that old car, just came in contact with oxygen. The normal process of oxidation took place, and it just broke it down. Well, we have oxidation in our bodies too. I don't like to say that we rust, but it's kind of similar to that. So just by virtue of us living and breathing and being human beings, our bodies are going through oxidation. And that's a normal process. And what that means for humans is that our cells break down, our cells build back up. Our body cells break down, our body cells build back up. And that's just normal. But when we're under times of stress, disease, psychological, emotional stress, anything that, an injury, anything like that, the oxidation speeds up, and it kind of surpasses our body's ability to repair. And so when we're in a state of oxidative stress, that means our cells are breaking down more quickly than they can build back up. So these nutrients are antioxidants, so that either slows or prevents the body from oxidizing. Does that make sense? And so the antioxidants now what we're talking about pertain to the brain cells and also to the central nervous system cells too. So antioxidants mean prevent that oxidative stress. If you remember when you were in 4th grade and we studied atoms, and atoms are the, very simple form of any kind of matter, and atoms have protons, neutrons, and electrons, and the neutrons and protons are kind of in the inside of the atom, and there's crazy electrons that are in the outer shells that are moving and being completely wacky all the time. When we go through oxidation, our bodies, those crazy electrons are called free radicals. Have you ever heard that term before? Free radicals, those are the crazy electrons, and they then impact surrounding cells and atoms, and it's like a domino effect. So essentially, when you're trying to antioxidize, you're trying to capture those crazy electrons so it's not the domino system to completely screw up all the surrounding cells, surrounding tissue, that kind of thing. So the bottom line with all that is just remember that antioxidants are good. If you have this beautiful apple and you cut it in quarters, you have it on your plate on the table, and then you get this phone call from your cousin who you haven't heard from in years. So you're sitting there talking to the cousin, having a great time. You don't want to crunch the apple as you're talking to the cousin. So you talk for an hour and a half, 2 hours, catching up. It's wonderful. And then you hang up the phone, close the phone call, and what's going on with the apple? It's oxidized, right? It starts turning rusty. It starts turning because the oxidation from the atmosphere has combined with the enzymes in the apple and the flesh of the apple, then they've caused it to kind of rust. You can eat that, but it's kind of gross. A lot of us just cut that off and eat it. So what caused that apple to not rust? What causes the apple to not rust?
Lemon juice.
Well, lemon juice is an antioxidant, but also the peel or the skin of the apple, whatever you want to call it. And once we cut into that, that's when stuff starts happening. So can you kind of equate that to antioxidants are like the apple peel that kind of protect our cells, or the lemon juice that will prevent that from being the domino effect. So once you kind of understand that, it's just really exciting when you talk about antioxidation. Fruits, veggies, nuts, seeds, and whole grains contain thousands of other types of compounds that contribute significantly. So what should we eat? So here's kind of the latest and greatest research. Many experts regard the Mediterranean, you guys know what the Mediterranean meal plan is, right? All the folks that live along the Mediterranean Sea, not all of them because now they have fast food over there, but they tend to be healthier and have less challenges than we do. So what this MIND, M-I-N-D, meal plan is a combination of the Mediterranean meal plan and the DASH meal plan. DASH stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. So if you ever do a review, a med review on the healthiest meal plans, Mediterranean and DASH always come to the top. So we'll kind of explain what each of those are. Research shows that these two meal plans can lower blood pressure, reduce the risk of heart disease, diabetes, and other diseases. But researchers wanted to actually create a meal plan specifically to improve brain function and slow the progression of dementia. So they combined the two, and they came up with this name. Well, first of all, let's look at I just get all excited about the MIND diet, but what's the Mediterranean meal plan? Eating primarily plant-based foods, fruits, veggies, whole grains, legumes, and nuts. Legumes or beans. Replacing butter with healthy fats like olive oil, canola. Using herbs and spices instead of salt. Limiting your red meat to no more than a few times a month. Eating fish and poultry a couple times a week. Enjoying meals with family and friends. Why? Why that? Because it's a lifestyle. The Mediterranean meal plan makes mealtime an occasion. Not just gulp in the car, not just gulp and run, but actually an occasion. So you enjoy your meals, drinking red wine in moderation, of course, and getting plenty of exercise. So that's kind of interesting that that's the Mediterranean lifestyle, the Mediterranean meal plan. So what is the DASH meal plan? It emphasizes fruits, veggies, and low-fat dairy foods. When I have a hypertensive patient, they'll always say to me, "Oh, Kathy, I know I need to watch my salt." And I said, "Yes, but you also need to increase your potassium." because sodium and potassium are in a fine balance. And with Americans, a lot of us, not all of us, but a lot of us really tip the scale in favor of sodium and not potassium. So it's been shown that if you get adequate potassium and if you get adequate calcium, that can contribute to overall health in a hypertensive person too. So that's why the low-fat dairy foods. The DASH meal plan also includes moderate amounts of whole grains, fish, poultry, nuts. That sounds really similar, doesn't it, to the Mediterranean meal plan. And the DASH meal plan actually has a couple of different levels. There's the standardized one, standard one, which tries to get you to limit your milligrams of sodium to 2,300. If I have like a patient that has kidney disease, they're on dialysis, if they're just like their hypertension is so off the chart, then we try to get them to consider the lower sodium DASH meal plan, which is really, really hard because we're so used to so much sodium in our food. Yeah, question?
When it says moderate amounts of whole grains, fish, poultry, and nuts, that almost sounds like not a lot, but less.
It's, I know, and the word moderate is really, it's not definitive, is it? And so when, if you specifically wanted a copy of the DASH meal plan or the Mediterranean meal plan, we would actually tell you the serving numbers based on your calorie needs. And so for all people across the board with the DASH meal plan for the preventing hypertension, you want to try to get in 5 to 6 servings of fruits and veggies a day and at least 4 of grains. But if you burn more calories because you're super active, then we would increase that. Does that make sense? So what I love when I instruct a client on the DASH meal plan, we'll actually calculate their BMR, their basal metabolic rate. We'll take into consideration their age, their physical activity. We'll come up with a calorie goal. And instead of them nickeling and diming and counting calories, they'll do food groups. And then they'll know I need that many grains, that many low-fat dairies, that many fruits and veggies, that much protein. And so moderate just means like 4 to 5 servings of grain, but the fruits and veggies is pretty hard and fast, anywhere from 4 to 7 servings of fruits and veggies a day to really get that potassium that you need. Any other questions with that? Does that make sense? We dietitians say moderation all the time. It's like, well, what does that really mean? So I'm glad you asked that question. Okay, any other comments? Or yeah?
When you talk about fish, is farm-raised fish okay?
We keep going back and forth between farm-raised, between ocean-raised, et cetera, back and forth. And they've done some nutrient studies, and because of the genetic makeup of the fish, like salmon, for example, it's pretty close. It's pretty close. Then you can just like pull your hair out with nutrition sometimes because, ocean raised sounds so much better, but then that may have a lot higher mercury content than farm raised, where they can control the nutrients and not have as much mercury. And so you kind of just go back and forth with it. I'm so happy if I get any of my clients to eat a couple servings of fish a week, that however they get it in. And the high fatty fish, I'm sure the sardines and the salmon is so much better, but then a lot of people just truly can't handle that oily taste. And I get it. So then we kind of come up with, can you use more olive oil? Can you use more canola oil? We kind of try to come up with some kind of an alternative plan. I had one client today, I've worked with her now for 4 months. Believe it or not, she cannot eat fruits and vegetables. It's a texture issue. I have never met anybody like that before. And she's an adult, she's an engineer, she's intelligent. I can't force her to eat fruits and vegetables, and I'm not going to, So we try to be really creative in other ways of how she can get those antioxidants in, because it is what it is. So we kind of figure it out, but I can't imagine having that aversion to fruits and veggies since I love them so much. So to me, it's really, really sad, but we can always figure out something to help that person get the nutrients that they need. So the MIND stands for M for Mediterranean, and then they put an I in there, so it makes it easier. D is dash. Oh, I'm sorry. No, it's Mediterranean / dash. So the M, then the I is intervention, then the N is neurogenerative, and D is delay. So that's how they came up with the MIND meal plan, the MIND diet. It aims to reduce dementia, decline in brain health, combines two very popular meal plans, Mediterranean and DASH. Currently, there's no set guidelines, but stay tuned, because it's going to be coming. And what I love to give you guys practical information. That's why we really need Michael to give you a copy of this so that you can actually have the 10 foods. Now, you can't jot it down or remember it, but I really want you to have it in hand. So we'll ask him about that. Or they always tend to disappear after I start, so maybe you can nail them and ask them, okay? So here's the 10 foods, all right? Leafy green vegetables. Oh my goodness. We've got to get the spinach, the leafy lettuce, the outer leaves of the romaine, kale, if you can, you're okay with kale. People always ask me, Kathy, if there's two things that you really want me to be a non-negotiable, I always say berries and leafy greens. And if you can't do the salad thing, then turn it to Popeye, the sailor man. I'm dating myself. But what you do is you get some fresh spinach, you get a skillet, you stripe it with some olive oil or canola oil, throw 2 or 3 handfuls of spinach in your skillet, throw some garlic powder and some onion powder on there, stir fry it, and this 2 cups of spinach turns into a ½ cup cooked. Power-packed vegetable. You can throw it in your smoothies, the green smoothies, that's fine too. But these are so important to get in, somehow, some way. I did this presentation to a senior citizen group one time, and the coordinators wanted me to include the blood thinner warfarin, because if you're on warfarin, my mother is, you can't eat a lot of leafy greens because of the vitamin K. Vitamin K in leafy greens actually makes your blood clot more. You know, my mom's on, it's Coumadin, but generic for warfarin. And the warfarin is allowing her not to have atrial fib. And she can't be on Eliquis or the other ones where she doesn't have to have her blood checked. She has to be on warfarin. And if she would sporadically eat greens whenever, wherever, we just went yesterday to have her blood checked. And if she would do that, her numbers would be all over the chart, and her pharmacist would just be crazy who's doing the testing. So the bottom line is, if you have loved ones or you yourself are on warfarin, the key is you can still eat leafy greens. Just do it consistently. See what I mean? Because then they will adapt your warfarin dose based on how you're consistently eating it. My mom's not consistent with her greens. She can be a little stubborn in that regard, but just so you understand the whole rationale behind this, vitamin K helps your blood to clot. Warfarin makes your blood clot more slowly. INR is the kind of new name for proton, and that's when they actually check the viscosity of your blood. You can eat dark leafy greens rich in K. You just need to maintain a constant intake. So let's say my mom would decide that she'd eat a spinach salad or eat some dark green broccoli twice a week, and would do that versus some here, some there, some here, some there. And then if she did it consistently, they would adjust her warfarin accordingly. Does that make sense? So you can still have it. You just need to be consistent. Then number 2 of the 10 is all other veggies. And what we're asking people to consider is non-starchy. The 3 starchy vegetables, corn, peas, and potatoes. And it doesn't matter if it's sweet potatoes or white potatoes, they're still starchy. And there's nothing wrong with those 3 starchy vegetables unless you're diabetic, and then you just have to moderate them because they contain carbohydrate. There's nothing wrong with those. It's just that they don't have the antioxidant power that the non-starchy vegetables would have. So, and they don't have to be leafy green. You know, it could be carrots, it could be cucumbers, radishes, broccoli, cauliflower, any of those great veggies. So it would just be try to eat another vegetable in addition. But I find that if you can do the leafy greens 6 or 7 times a week, just let it be almost prescriptive, you're going to feel better. It's crazy how much. And then you know what a serving size is? For cooked vegetables, it's a half a cup. For raw, it's a full cup. Makes sense. It cooks down to a half cup. Okay? Any questions about those two things yet? Okay? And then here's my other thing. Berries, 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 berries. Strawberries, blueberries, blackberries, doesn't matter. They're all wonderful. So as I told you before, if there's a prescriptive thing that I'm always harping on my clients about, it's the 1 cup of leafy greens every day, and it's a half a cup of berries. Doesn't matter if it's in a smoothie, in your yogurt, in your oatmeal, doesn't matter. If it's expensive because they're off season, you're worth it. You can buy them frozen, at one of the big stores. And you can throw them in your smoothie, you can let them thaw out, stir them in your yogurt. You need to get those berries in. They're loaded. And you are so worth it to get those berries in. Nuts, try to get 5 servings of nuts or more a week. The creators of the Mind meal plan don't specify what kind of nuts, but really it's any of them. You'll read something that cashews are best, peanuts are best, walnuts are best, Brazil nuts are best. They're all good. They all contain that really good oil called monounsaturated fats, which are good for heart health and now good for our brains too. You know what I'm going to say about nuts? The only problem with nuts is that they're so dense in calories. And so you need to kind of regulate how much you eat. And when you say a small handful, well, it really depends on how big your hand is, right? So when I do like meal plans for people, we'll say, well, what's a serving size? It's like, 10 cashew halves, 5 whole cashews, like 5 pecans. Well, that's kind of nothing, right? If you buy the big, Sam's or Costco mixed nuts, we take handfuls. The problem is, if you are very active and you burn those calories, that's fine, but a lot of us aren't. And so nuts can be, kind of addictive for some of us. I can't keep cashews in the house because I can't quit. And so, you know how you can handle the serving size. But nuts are great because they've got the good combination of oils. Did you have a question?
Serving size.
Okay. And then the oil, yeah.
A question about nuts. If you have a tree nut and peanut allergy, is there some other way to get those sort of nutrients?
It's because not all, because peanuts are under the ground. So all nuts, right? You want to avoid all nuts. What nuts mainly have in them is protein and monounsaturated fats. And so monounsaturated fats are also in olive oil and canola oil, grapeseed oil, and other oils. So you can certainly just be more mindful of getting those 3 oils in and you'll be fine. Yeah, the allergy completely trumps because it can be a life or death situation. Thank you for asking that question. That's really good. And you guys know...
Coconut oil too, awesome.
Oh, don't get me going on coconut oil. I think we had this discussion before. When I was in school, coconut oil and palm seed or palm kernel oil were the 2 saturated fats that were plant sources. And so they did raise your cholesterol level, which was so weird because they're from plants. So then coconut oil kind of made a comeback. And who really uses coconut oil, or who was using it, are movie theaters. Because you can really get it high heat and it doesn't start smoking. And so then as soon as the movies are switching off, the crowds are switching, they had that coconut oil so hot that they'd throw the popcorn kernels in there and they'd pop immediately, and then people would go floating over to the snack bar, because they'd smell that. So I was trained, no coconut oil, it's all in this nasty food and stuff. And then coconut oil kind of made a comeback. But the American Heart Association does say that if you have an elevated cholesterol problem, which is an LDL, L stands for lousy, lazy, low life, it's the bad cholesterol. H stands for healthy, happy, hyper, that's the good cholesterol. So if you have the lousy, lazy, low-life cholesterol problem like I do, because I got it from my mom and dad, I got to avoid coconut oil. But if you don't, then it's okay. Good compromise? And so olive oil, Do you guys know about the different kinds, right? The extra virgin, the virgin, and just the olive oil. It has to do with the pressing of the olives. So the first pressing is extra virgin. The second pressing is extra virgin. And the third pressing is just olive oil. You want to get it cold pressed because, and most all olive oils that you buy today are cold pressed. Hot pressed, what that tends to do is changes the good structure of the monounsaturated fats. So you're kind of defeating the purpose. When you talk about fats, we have saturated fat, we have polyunsaturated fat, and we have monounsaturated fat. Mono means one, right? So when I took bioorganic chemistry way back in school, we learned that all organic foods are, and organic just means from plants, not necessarily like organic the way that we talk about today, consist of carbons, hydrogens, and oxygens. Little atoms that are all strung together to make a molecule. Not to get too scientific on you, but saturated fats are when all the carbon atoms have no double bonds. Polyunsaturated fat is when that chain of carbon atoms have more than one double bond, and monounsaturated fat means there's just one double bond. So that's all it means. You don't need to know that. You need to know that polyunsaturated fats and monounsaturated fats are the healthiest. What are they? Olive oil, canola oil. Those are the two best. Well, grapeseed oil is a good one too, and sesame oil. And then comes under that would be the soybean, the corn oil, that kind of stuff that they used to use in all processed food products. And then the coconut oil is a saturated fat. So that's the problem. But if you don't have that LDL problem like I do, it's okay. You can use it. That's all right. So what chefs will usually use is the extra virgin olive oil because extra virgin tastes so olivey that it completely masks whatever you're eating and makes it taste like an olive. If you like olives, that's great. But if you don't, then you want to use extra virgin and then get the benefit of that monounsaturated fat. And then the other thing with olive oil, it's got that low smoking point. You've heard of that, right? So if you're going to do it like to stir fry or something that's really high heat, and you pour that in there and it starts smoking, you're breaking down the good stuff. That's why in a lot of Asian restaurants, when they stir fry at the table, they'll use sesame oil. That has that characteristic, smell when you go into an Asian restaurant because it can handle the high heat. So for olive oil, use it as a marinade, use it in salad dressings, use it for low heat, brush it on your salmon and stuff on the grill. You might not get the whole benefit of it, but that's still okay. So that's why people will have canola handy to use because it has a higher a higher smoking point. And so when you're doing high heat stuff, then you can do that, or the coconut oil. Yeah.
So in an air fryer, use a canola oil.
Right. Yes. Good question. Any questions about these 5 things so far? Isn't it simple? You can do this. You can do this. This is easy. This is practical stuff. Whole grains. You want to try to get 3 servings a day. Kind of your question about what's moderation. Choose whole grains. You guys know that. Real quick little history lesson. When you take any kind of a grain and you cut across section, the outer part of it's called the bran, and that's where a bunch of micronutrients are and all the fiber. That inside starchy stuff is called the endosperm, and that's where all the good starchy nutrition is for that seed to help that seed sprout. And then the tiny little nucleus in there is called the germ. And that's like where things kind of start in the life of the seed if you're going to plant it. So back in the old days, when the farmers would bring all their grain to be milled, they would grind it, in the big grinding machines, and it would contain the bran, the starchy stuff, and that little germ. But back then, people baked bread every other day, and they ate it. They didn't buy a bunch of stuff and put it in their pantry and eat it down, 4 or 5 weeks or 4 or 5 days down the road. So what I'm trying to say is stuff didn't get moldy and stuff didn't spoil. So then we started deciding, we want long shelf life with our food. So we know that little tiny germ in there has some oil. And if we, excuse me, keep that germ in there, then that food could go rancid. Maybe some of you are eating it yet today, but wheat germ used to be a really big thing like 20 years ago, but you had to keep it in the refrigerator because it can go rancid. So then when all these food manufacturers started going hog wild, they said, we can't keep that germ in there. We don't want that bran in there. We just want to make white bread. So we're going to throw out the bran, we're going to throw out the germ, we're going to feed the pigs the bran and the germ, and we're just going to use that starchy stuff. We took a lot of good nutrients out of there. So now we need to enrich it and put the stuff back in that we think that we took out by taking out the bran and the germ. So it really made a horrible predicament because all the good stuff was gone. So now we're back to whole wheat this, whole grain that. It's so much better now. That's why a lot of the, like brownberry bread, you have to keep in the fridge because it is completely whole wheat. And so you want to find things that you get the entire kernel. And so how do you know if it's high in fiber or not? You look at the label. You find the product that you like and you try to find the one that has the highest amount of fiber per serving. A good goal is 4 to 5 grams per serving. Sometimes it's hard to find, but that's a good goal, 4 to 5 grams per serving of fiber. Yeah.
What's the significance when you have celiac disease? They're saying it has something to do.
Right, and with celiac, it's a whole different ballgame. It's the protein in the grain called gluten. So that's the offending ingredient. And it's in wheat, barley, and rye. But it's not in rice and some of the other grains. So what it actually is when a person has celiac, either celiac disease or a gluten sensitivity or intolerance, it's that protein, gluten, acts like an allergen and completely screws up their digestive system to the point of making it so aggravating that it like sloughs off and it's horrible. And so that's a whole different ingredient. That's the protein, but that's a really good question. Does that make sense to you?
That protein is really within the seed. That they
Right, within the entire kernel. Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, and quinoa is gluten-free, and rice is gluten-free, and oats gluten-free too. And I always like to tell you about the oatmeal thing. I'll have people, well, Kathy, what's the best oatmeal? I just use steel cut. That's fine. But steel cut and rolled oats have the exact same amount of fiber. When you make oatmeal, whether it's steel cut or rolled, you take that basic little oat, which is called a groat, and then if it's chopped up with these little steel knives, that's called steel cut. Takes a little longer to cook, stovetop or in the microwave. If you take that groat and roll it between 2 metal drums, that's called rolled. Did anything happen to the fiber? Is it still all there? Yep. How do you make quick oats? You take that rolled one and chop it up so it cooks faster. More surface area is exposed when you cook it. The only oatmeal that you really need to watch are the flavored packets. And you're going to have all that additional sugar and all that stuff too. So, but any of those oats are great. Whether it's quick oats, rolled oats, or steel cut. It's what you like, what your preference would be. Okay, and then fish, we kind of talked about that. The salmon, the sardines, the trout, the tuna, and the mackerel because they are high. Beans. I can't tolerate a lot of beans personally because I'm missing the enzyme in my digestive system to digest the starch in beans. So I have to be really, really careful. There's certain beans I can eat and certain beans I can't eat. But for people like me, I tell them, get that supplement called Beano because that's a replacement enzyme. And so if I know that I'm going to have like 4-bean salad at my sister's house because she loves making that, and I know that I can only eat light kidney beans and I can eat garbanzos, but I can't eat the other ones, I'll take a Beano right before I have a small serving of that, and it'll do the trick for me. But if you can eat beans, wonderful fiber, wonderful antioxidant power. So all beans, lentils, soybeans, all those things are great. My daughter's 2 little girls, she's a very busy woman. She's got an almost 3-year-old and a 14-month-old, and their favorite thing to eat is edamame. And they just peel it right out and just eat those things, and it's like, good job. Eat those soybeans. And then poultry, trying to eat turkey or poultry twice a week, and that's mainly as a substitute for red meat. I'm not anti-red meat if you don't have a cholesterol issue, an LDL issue like I do. Get the lean red meat. If it's your birthday, you get the biggest steak you want. If that's what you want for your birthday, that's totally fine. But as a rule, if we can do more of the chicken and the fish, that would be really helpful. And then the wine thing, the challenge with alcohol in America today is now that we have all these microbreweries and we have our wine glasses have gone from 5 ounces to the whole fishbowl now. So it's been the serving size. And we're starting to see people with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease that are otherwise healthy because they're chugging so much beer, craft beer especially, and wine. And there's nothing wrong with that. You just have to be careful. And so red wine, and what I love about this is both red and white may be beneficial, but the main research has been on the red wine because the resveratrol, which is the antioxidant ingredient, but we still really, truly need to be in moderation because I'm starting to see 30, 40-year-olds that have fatty livers. They're not alcoholics, but that's where we normally would see fatty liver as in alcoholics. And so it's like, well, how much do you drink? Well, I drink 2 or 3 craft beers a night. And it's like craft beers are like quadruple the normal calories of a light beer and the alcohol content too. And I know it's fun because we're getting back to our Cincinnati roots, but you still need to be kind of moderate in that. Okay? Oh, and I always have the question, Kathy, how do you know if you have a fatty liver? And if you're not alcoholic, when an alcoholic has a fatty liver, normally they get jaundice and have the whites of their eyes get yellowed and they get kind of a yellow cast to their skin. And so if you get an annual physical, you always want to have them check, and they generally do, your liver enzymes and make sure they're not elevated. And the other indicator of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is if your triglycerides are off the chart. And then all you have to do, because the liver is so regenerative, is cut back on your alcohol. Don't eliminate it, but cut it back and drop 10 pounds. And normally that if you haven't gone to the point of no return, that usually takes care of the liver issue for you. But what I find is people don't get physicals, people don't find out if they have it, and then it gets to the point of no return. Because the liver is a miraculous organ, but we can't live without a liver. So if you're unable to consume the targeted amount, don't quit. Just do what you can. Because following, like with the nuts, following some of it has been shown to be a reduced risk of Alzheimer's. When you're following it, you can eat more than just these 10 foods. Of course you can. You can eat all the different food groups. But the more you stick to it, the better your results will be. Eating the 10 recommended foods and less of the foods to avoid have been associated with a lower risk of Alzheimer's. That's amazing. So now let's talk about the 5 foods to avoid. And this makes us all very sad because we like these things. Butter and margarine, try to limit to 1 tablespoon a day. I think that's pretty doable. There are 3 teaspoons per tablespoon, so that would be 3 little pats a day of butter or margarine. This is the one that gets to everybody, especially wine and cheese. And so that's a tough one. Because I'm telling you that the DASH diet says increase your calcium intake, and then of course cheese has high calcium amount, but it's that doggone saturated fat. So just double up on your 10 good foods and go ahead and have a little cheese. Okay, but if we could limit it to less, how do you do it to less than once a week? I guess it's like every other week. Red meat, we talked about that. And then they're talking about no more than 3 servings. I think a lot of us are doing that already because of eating fish and turkey and chicken too. Fried foods, and the reason for the fried foods, it's so many different things. It's food changes when it's fried, especially if it's charred. You get those things called AGEs, which are inflammatory, like that crunchy, part of the burger or that crunchy part of the steak. And so if we can kind of watch our fried foods, that would be great. And the pastries and sweets, just because when we load up on those, then we don't have room for the good stuff. And it's going to have the saturated fats in it, the extra sugar, and the extra salt too. So I think it's pretty doable to try not to have it more than 4 times a week. So what they did is they took the polyunsaturated fats, the soybean, the cottonseed, the corn oil that had multiple double bonds, and they pumped them full of hydrogen to make them single bonds. All you need to know is that took it from the liquid form and made it solid, like lard. And that's what trans fats are. Trans fats are when they pump these good oils with hydrogen to make them solid. And so the thought was, well, it's perfectly healthy because the corn oil, the sunflower oil, the safflower oil, the soybean oil, those were all healthy before. All we're doing is pumping them full of hydrogen. So what's with that? It turned it into lard. It turned it into an unhealthier fat, almost worse than butter. So those are the trans fats. So now our food industry is taking all these trans fats out of our food supply, which is really, really good. So they're like kind of fake fats. The health effects of saturated fats have been widely debated, although the research on saturated fats and heart disease may be inconclusive and contested. Animal research and observational studies do suggest that consuming saturated fat in excess is associated with poor brain health. There's been research too with coconut oil that there may be a chance that coconut oil may help in preventing the progression of Alzheimer's. And it has to do with this blood-brain barrier for oils. So stay tuned. We'll get more research on that, which will be really exciting. So the MIND meal plan may decrease oxidative stress and inflammation. Current research on the MIND meal plan has not been able to show exactly how it works, but the scientists who are creating that meal plan think by reducing the oxidative stress and inflammation. Oxidative stress occurs when unstable molecules, free radicals, those crazy electrons I was telling you about, accumulate in the body. Inflammation is your body's natural response to injury. So there's nothing wrong with inflammation. It's just when it overpowers your whole body. But if it's not properly regulated, it can be harmful and contribute to many chronic diseases. Oxidative stress and inflammation can be quite detrimental to the brain because your brain cells are constantly turning over quickly, and so they get that much more prone to damage because of the oxidative stress. In recent years, they've been the focus of interventions to prevent Alzheimer's, and so following these 2 meal plans have been associated with lower levels of oxidative stress, and not just in your brain, but in other chronic conditions like diabetes, heart disease, osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, and those kind of chronic infections or inflammations too. Because the MIND meal plan is a hybrid, it probably has both antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects. So the antioxidants in berries and the vitamin E in olive oil, green leafy vegetables, and nuts are thought to benefit the brain function. Additionally, omega-3 fatty acids found in fatty fish. So before I just kind of gave you the food items, and now we're kind of talking about what are the ingredients in these food items that can really slow down that oxidative stress. And so it's the vitamin E, it's the omega-3 fatty acids, which is just a type of acids in the fatty fish, and that's been associated with slowing the loss of brain function. They're not hocus pocus. It's just really trying to get you to eat more of these antioxidant foods. But for now, if you're looking for a way of eating that focuses on maintaining our brain health, it's the MIND meal plan is the way to go. And that's it.